Good evening. I hereby call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Wilmette Public School District 39 for Monday, May 23rd, 2016. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alice Schaff.
Here.
Kimberly Alcantara. Here. John Flanagan.
Here.
Tracy Kenny. Here. Frank Jensica. Cindy McGee.
Here.
Thank you. I understand that our wire choir is here and will be playing for us before the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hi, so I would like to welcome our HMS Wire Choir here this evening at Highcrest. We have all different levels of kids playing instruments in our orchestra, and our Wire Choir is made up of students that have a little bit more experience with their stringed instruments, and so they come to us under the direction of Miss Ann McTighe, so she's going to say a few words about what they're going to play.
The piece that the Wire Choir has prepared for you today is called Beethovening. You'll hear a lot of very familiar, famous tunes from famous composers throughout the piece that are put together in a very interesting way. The one that goes throughout the whole piece is Beethoven's Ode to Joy, so you'll hear it in many different versions as the students play. Okay, I hope you enjoy.
Awesome job, Wire Choir. Now our Wire Choir will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. While the Wire Choir is getting seated, I'd like to point out the artwork behind me. Wilmette Junior High School art teacher Paige Lundy shared 8th grader self-portraits on display in the boardroom behind me. Students learned about facial drawing techniques and proportions. They contemplated their family history and family traits to understand how aspects of their personality are formed. Students reflected on their life experiences, personal characteristics, and interpreted all of these into their portraits. So they're really nice if you can come up and take a look. Now may I seek a motion to approve the minutes of the April 25th, 2016 regular and executive session meetings.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion having been made and seconded, board members, are there any comments, errors, or omissions to the minutes? Okay, seeing none. All of those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Great. The motion carries by general consent. This brings us to the first opportunity for audience members to address the board. Are there any audience members who would like to address the board at this time? Okay. Please come up to the podium. I must remind all speakers to use the microphone, state your name, and by board directive, you're allowed 5 minutes per speaker or 15 minutes per topic. I do want to remind everybody that this is the monthly business meeting of the Board of Education, which is held in public according to the Open Meetings Act. During our meeting, we provide opportunities for the public to present to the board about district subjects that are of interest to them. And if you have specific questions, Dr. Luckner will respond promptly tomorrow. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Stone. I live at 1621 Highland Avenue in Wilmette. I was at the Jewel this afternoon and was pushing my cart full of bagged groceries out the door and stopped when I noticed the current edition of the Wilmette Life and was impressed with the cover story, so went back, got a copy, went back through the line and paid for it. For people who don't know, the cover story was about how local school districts reacted to the Obama administration's May 13th letter about trans bathroom issues. I have loved District 39 for more than 7 years, since our family has first been involved with it. We moved here for the schools. I have never been prouder of this district than this afternoon when I was at home reading the article. To see what our district's policy is, about how ahead of the curve it is on this, and even ahead of the Obama administration it is. I think this issue is very important, and I feel very strongly about it. And your sensitivity and compassion and sound judgment on this issue, which it's about kids and how kids are treated and how they feel comfortable in a school. I think it's really top shelf. And you're on the right side of this issue, and kudos to you guys, and many thanks.
Thank you very much, Erin. Would anybody else like to address the board at this time? Okay, great. Then we will move on with our agenda. The first is the board committee reports. The Facility Development Committee, Ms. Alcantara.
All right, we met, the Facilities Development Committee met just last week on May 19th, Thursday at 8 a.m. here at the MEC. We first received an update from Dr. Lechner on the results of water tests that we conducted in our schools, which showed 0% lead in our 6 school buildings. At the MEC, trace amounts at 2.8 parts per billion were detected, likely attributable to a valve on the building that is going to be replaced, at which point additional retesting will be done. Worth noting that the amount of lead permissible in bottled water is 5 parts per billion, and the amount detected at the MEC was less than 3 parts per billion, which again I think is worth noting, and thank you for diligently following up. We also received an update on the Learning Commons in preparation for work that will begin this summer on June 13th at both Harper School and the junior high. Schedules are on track, I'm happy to report, and expected completion is August 15th, which we look forward to. We reviewed, and the administration ultimately did not recommend pursuing the possibility of acquiring a used chiller from Northfield Schools. District 39 is at the beginning of a new life safety cycle, which means the district and our architects are reviewing what projects qualify for life safety work. This review and identification process will likely take throughout fiscal year 17, at which point we will submit the new plan to the Illinois State Board of Education. We discussed exploring performance contracting as an idea for funding certain District 39 facilities projects, and we received a technology update from Tony DeMonte, which was with respect to cabling work and electrical work in our buildings. Our next meeting, actually, I'm not sure of the date. I don't have it right before me. It will be in June on a Thursday morning at 8 a.m. at the MEC.
I think it's the 13th or something like that. I was
We'll
just
go with
putting
that.
my calendar, yeah.
All right. It will be posted. Thank you.
June 16th.
June 16th.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay. Great, thank you. Insurance Advisory, Ms. Kearney.
No, actually, I'm
Mr.
going to
Steen.
do that one,
Okay, sorry.
Insurance Advisory Committee met on May 2nd.
Heard ya.
See, yeah, go for it. We reviewed the dental insurance and Unum Life and long-term disability plans, as well as the FCA COBRA third-party administrator renewal. There were no plan changes discussed for any of these items. We discussed the Employee Assistance Program, the broad utility of which we continue to communicate to employees. One example given was that the program can be used to find a range of services, such as elder care for employees' aging family members. We will also continue to improve our communication and delivery of our wellness screening program this year. We had some challenges with having a sufficient number of early morning appointment times last year, but we believe that the changes we've made will ameliorate that issue this year. Nonetheless, if there are any issues that arise with the wellness screening this fall, we ask that employees should contact Heather as soon as they become apparent. And that's the timer that says Ms. Stone's time is up, so I think we're okay on that. Of particular note, although we have communicated this before, employees who would like to have more than 2 years of their historical screening data transferred to our new provider should reach out to Heather. We reviewed our medical insurance premium renewal, the original quote for which was an increase of over 11%, due to PPO and HMO loss ratios of 101 and 89% respectively. This report led to a very constructive discussion about ways to reduce the premium growth, the resulting options for which will be presented in a future report. Finally, open enrollment will take place consistent with last year's well-received practice just at the end of the school year from June 1st to June 9th. Our current schedule for the coming year calls for meetings on the 17th of October, the 27th of February, and the 1st of May, 2018.
Great, thank you very much. CRC, no real report tonight. They're going to be presenting later on their final report representing their year of self-reflection. So we're looking forward to that one. Educational Foundation, the next meeting is, they have not had a meeting since our last school board meeting, and their next meeting is Wednesday night here at the MEC. WCSEA.
That's me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to
That
wing
really
that
is you.
mark
Okay,
at all. Anyway, the Wilmette Community Special Education Association, WICSE, met today, actually, at Murray Murphy at 4 o'clock, and at that meeting, we adopted the fiscal year 17 WICSE tentative budget and approved a public budget hearing for which this board's going to be voting on later. We approved the fiscal year activity to date through April 16, and also approved the WICSE Advisory Board meeting dates for 16-17, of which the next meeting will be November 14th at 4 p.m. here at the MAC.
Great, thank you very much. School Finance, Mr. Flanagan.
The School Finance Committee met on May 9th. We had a presentation on performance contracting. Kimberly mentioned this. It's a concept according to which you identify energy system improvements that create sufficient savings to pay for the upgrades over a defined and guaranteed period of time. And as Kimberly mentioned, the FDC will also be looking at this concept in the context of some long-range planning. We had 2 discussions about fiscal 17 tentative budgets. These are under tonight's annual business agenda. The first of which was District 39's budget. The second was, as Tracy mentioned, WCSEA. Finally, we discussed a resolution for fiscal 17 capital projects resolution to transfer $1.5 million of project costs from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. A reminder, these transfers are designed to segregate capital project costs, which are non-recurring, from the normal O&M budget. We thereby get better visibility on both budgets. The next meeting of the School Finance Committee has not yet been scheduled.
Great, thank you very much. A legislative update, Ms. Alcantara.
Basically, we are still waiting for movement in Springfield, although some anticipate that a new K through 12 education budget proposal may be soon emerging, which would acknowledge that the current school funding distribution formula is not adequate. The proposal would suspend use of the formula for FY16, and districts would instead receive the same amount of GSA funding that they received in FY16, plus a share of an additional $500 million that would be distributed separately based on student poverty counts. That new funding block would be defined as the equity grant. Under this potentially pending proposal, districts would generally receive no less funding than they receive this current year. Mandated categorical grants and other line items would be funded at FY16 levels generally. Replacement funding formulas are being discussed to begin in FY18, but again, as I said at the beginning, we are still waiting for actual movement.
Great, thank you very much. Written communication is our first item under information items. The board received a separate written communications from Jackie Koch and Tracy Knudsen regarding adding another first grade section at Central Elementary School. And now let's move to the administrative announcements. Dr. Lechner.
At this time each year, we look at student and staff recognition. We're going to start with some more student recognition. Kelly Jackson and Allison Eakley are here to recognize our science Olympiads as well as our math counts students.
Science is often thought to be about numbers. So, the Science Olympiad season lasts 7 months. There are 23 events in which teams of 2 compete. There were 25 JV members and 15 varsity members this year. Of the 3 competitions that the JV team competed in, we brought home 44 medals. Of the 5 competitions the varsity team participated in, our team brought home 127 medals. Our varsity team earned first place. Our varsity team earned a first place trophy at the regionals, and then 19 families and 2 coaches drove 2.5 hours to U of I to compete among 46 teams on an 80-degree day on the 16th of April. Although we are proud of these numbers and the accomplishments they represent, I personally agree with the great Albert Einstein, who said, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." I think this represents the countless hours that these competitors dedicated to their events. Watching students of mixed age, gender, strength, and races work together to further develop their curiosity for science. I cannot quantify how students apply skills that they've learned through the District 39 education curriculum with complex applications and learning from one competition to show growth for the next competition. There has been immeasurable support from the parents, District 39 administrators, and the Education Foundation. Finally, there is no unit to represent the laughter, high fives, and memory making of the 5th through 8th graders as they support one another at Science Olympiad competitions. And I think we can all agree that this is what truly counts. So to the 2016 state competition team, I want to thank you for making it count. And now, if the math counts students will also stay and to be presented by Principal Jackson.
Thanks, Allison. All right, awesome job. Literally. And if we have some math counts people, I'll have you guys join me over at the podium here. We have some amazing trophies that we want to share with you. Clearly, we have some students doing double duty this evening. So on behalf of Ann Jacobs and Michelle D. St. Aubin, who are our Math Counts sponsors, I'm really pleased to introduce our Math Counts winning team this year. I'd like to pass the microphone and have you guys just introduce yourselves.
Finya. I'm Margaret Lynn.
Adrian Kolinescu.
I'm Maggie Tao.
I'm Alina Schultz.
I'm Athena Zhang.
Irene Shu.
I'm Jesse Yang.
So Math Counts meets weekly from September to March. Students compete in December to determine the top 10 students who are able to compete at regionals. In February, our top 10 students competed at regionals. This year, our team of Adrian Kalinescu, Maggie Chiao, Jacob Furfine, and Jesse Yang placed first. This was our first time. Also, it's kind of, the trophy's kind of like the Stanley Cup. So our name looks like it's breaking another winning streak by another district, so we're pretty proud of that too. This was our first time in 5 years of competing that we placed first as a team, and Jacob Furfine placed first in the countdown round, while Jesse Yang placed first as an individual. It was a sweep in all categories. In addition to the Math Counts competition, we also entered a Math League competition hosted at Northwestern University in early March. In the 7th grade category, Jeffrey Tang earned a 5th place finish, and Grace Ann Yu won a 3rd place finish. In 8th grade, Maggie Chiao earned 5th place, and Jacob Furfine won a 2nd place, and Jesse Yang won a 1st place. Our team placed first, and Jesse won the countdown round, beating out all other competitors. In March, our team competed at the state Math Counts competition. Our team placed 2nd at the state level. The highest we had placed in the past was 6th, so this was super exciting. And Jesse Yang placed 2nd individually. This 2nd place finish earned Jesse an all-expense-paid trip to the National Math Counts competition in Washington, D.C. He competed at nationals earlier this month and continued to make us proud. He was the high scorer on the Illinois national team and placed 35th out of 224 mathletes. Amazing job, Jesse. It certainly was an exciting season for Math Counts, and we thank the PTO for all of their support in this journey.
Great, thank you. Congratulations to both teams. Ooh, you guys are amazing.
Next, I'd like to invite Jeff Yasumoto here to the podium with some chess team members. This is now an annual event for the Ramona, Highcrest, and Wilmette Junior High School chess teams.
Jeff, we're ready for you.
People coming in.
A lot of kids coming. We have like 50.
Thank you.
Yeah.
addressing the board. Hi, we got the, very happy to wrap up the Wilmette chess season. Thing I'm happiest about this year is that we're continuing to grow, and the breadth of our club. We have state champions from 2nd grade all the way up to 8th grade, which is kind of a new thing. We couldn't have everybody here, so we have some representatives from Ramona, Highcrest, Wilmette Junior High. This year we had 5 top 5 state finishes, including 2 state championships and 1 runner-up. Our junior high kids, they went to nationals, and they also were the Greater Chicago champions, junior high varsity division champions. So let me just introduce everybody. For our 2nd graders, we have Aya Yasumoto, we have Benjamin Newman, we have Zach Myers. For our 4th graders, we have Ethan Fogel, George Angelov, Keone Osborne, and Riley Bird. And then for Highcrest, we have Sarah Lynn. And for Wilmette Junior High, we have Adrian Kalinescu, Alex Yasumoto, Max Malecki, Justin Weinsweig. And I think that's about it. We're going to try and keep it short and keep things moving. Oh, one last thing. Is that we're starting to run out of space for our trophies, so to copy New Trier, we're actually going to institute a perpetual plaque. Got it. So where you can have a plaque, and then we're going to have the various just years accumulate, and if you could come up and maybe get a picture, so the kids, when they go back to their schools, they can point back to the years that they were there and say, yeah, they were there either that year or multiple years. So can we get somebody to get a photo up there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, so let's see. I'll hold this over here.
Congratulations.
Just one last thing. I skipped it because he was right there. Miss Kaden Liu. Thank you.
Yes, great.
Thank you. Moving on with, now we're going to talk about staff recognition. Each time at this time of the year, I'll just pause for a second. Okay, each year at this time is Teacher Appreciation Week at our schools. The week is filled with generous PTA and O support of our staff. We are thankful for our excellent teachers and support staff, and we're grateful for the time and generosity the PTAs and O's give to our schools. We also have at this time of year is our annual Reflections Gathering, where we honor retirees and the longevity of staff. On May 11th, we honored 22 5-year employees, 23 15-year employees, 5 25-year employees, and 27 retirees. Michigan Shores was a beautiful venue for this event. We had 217 staff members attending. It was quite exciting, and it was a really feel-good evening. Next, I want to welcome some new administrators the board will be voting on later this evening. We'll start with Doug Wilmette. We welcome Doug as the new 7th grade assistant principal at the Wilmette Junior High School. Doug is coming from Tinley Park Community Consolidated School District 146, where he is an interim assistant principal. Prior to the interim AP position, Doug was a middle school reading language arts teacher in the same district. Preceding his educational career, he was an on-air reporter in El Paso, Texas for the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock newscasts. He has a BA from the University of Iowa and master's degree from Concordia and Olivet Nazarene. Doug.
Good evening. I just want to say it's so great to meet everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I can't wait to begin here, so thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next, we welcome John Valentino as the new assistant principal for Harper and Ramona schools. He comes from Aptekistick Trick School District 102, where he served as the district coordinator supporting administration with curriculum and instruction, English language learners, and special education. Prior to his coordinator position, he taught English language arts and history to 8th graders in Glencoe District 35, as well as Indian Prairie District 204. He also taught ELA to 1 year to 6th graders in St. Thomas, Virgin Island. He has a BA from Northern Illinois University and a master's from National Louis University. John.
Well, thank you, everybody, for having me here. I'm really excited to be here in Wilmette 39 and to work under Cindy and Sue. I feel really blessed and just excited to start, so thank you very much.
Great, and lastly, we have Megan Young, who could not be here tonight because she lives in San Diego, California. We welcome her as the new assistant principal for Central Mackenzie. She comes from King Chavez Academy of Excellence in San Diego, California, where she served as vice principal since July of 2014. Megan also mentored new faculty and led workshops for visiting educators interested in project-based learning. She also taught rigorous STEM-based curriculum in kindergarten through 6th grade at a Title I school. She has a BS from Smith College in Massachusetts and a master's degree at the University of San Diego. So we're excited to welcome some new administrators. Next is our website refresh. We're almost ready to have our new website go live, and you can expect to see it in June after school is out. It provides a fresh look along with our new logo and tagline, and users will find improved menus and navigation. Tony DeMonte and Holly Golden are going to give us a quick demo.
Good evening. If I can draw your attention to the screens. What you see is our new website, as Dr. Lechner mentioned. It'll be released after school is out. Up in the left-hand corner, it incorporates the new brand that Holly had worked with the committee on, so that will be released the same time as the site. Also, a feature of this site that I'd like to mention is its responsiveness to the size of the screen that the viewer that's looking at it from. It's called responsive design. So if they're looking at it from a desktop or a laptop or a tablet or a cell phone, it resizes based on the screen. So there's no need for a separate app, let's say, for a mobile device. And I'll move the window here so you can you see that, and Holly will mention the next few items.
So as Tony shows about how the responsive design works, you see as it gets smaller, tablet, now phone size, it reformats. But the whole site, all the information on it is still available. You just keep scrolling down and down. So that's the district site. That's, kind of the general look and feel of it. And you see the tagline, Together We Learn and Grow. And the menu setup is changed. So these are called mega menus. If you just scroll across, you see how they drop down. I'm going to pause here at the parents. This is an area that we had some dissatisfaction with on our old site, because you clicked on parents and you had this just long list of things. It was hard to find. So we did a segmentation and broke things down into categories. And then you would click, for instance, on food services, and that would take you to the page about food services. Then from here, the directory has changed also. So this is the district site, so you'd see the district directory, and there you see the district staff, alphabetical order with our little pictures and our email addresses, easy to find. Each school site will have their own directory. And then from the district page, you can go, whoops, I'm getting better at it too, to the school sites. For instance, I'll show Mackenzie. So you'll see it has the same look and feel, same sort of general template, but their own identity at the top. Photos would be different for the schools than for the district. News would be school-based. So here's something about their poetry slam. And on the school sites is where you'd find things like lunch menu. I'm having a hard time with your computer. There. So here's the lunch menu. And you can print it, hang it on your refrigerator, whatever you want to do with it. And from there, you could just go back, Tony, there we go, to the school page or to the district site.
Our current website is hosted here at the MEC. This new set of websites are off-site hosted. So what that does is it provides better security as well as redundancy in someone else's server farm, and therefore we will have increased uptime with the website. As noted before, it'll be released in June, and we are in the process of scheduling training with our school webmasters and key people here at the MEC.
Thank you. Next, we're proud to announce that the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County honored all 6 of our schools with an award, noting our waste reduction practices such as waste-free lunch days, water stations and cafeterias, composting, Be Nice, Use It Twice boxes, reusable plates, cups, utensils, recycling, food organics, composting, and textile collections for donation. And all the schools got a plaque like this one. And then lastly, we received 2 FOIA this month. The first one was from Marianne Schaum, a Wilmette resident, regarding proof of residency information. The second was Jennifer Smith Richards of Chicago Tribune, requesting public records relating to water quality testing and associated environmental testing contracts dating back to July 1st of 2012.
Great, thank you, Dr. Lechner. Under our strategic plan updates, we would like to invite the CRC, the Community Review Committee, to give us their report for the year. Turn it on. I think it's not on.
Better?
Yes. Beautiful.
Thank you for having us here tonight from the CRC. I'm Matthew Pietrafetta. I'm co-president of the CRC 2015-2016 year, and I just want to kick it off with 2 takeaways from the opening festivities of tonight. One, I think the CRC needs its own theme music. If we had those wonderful students playing Ode to Joy to us every night, every time before a committee meeting, I think we'd be much more inspired. And number 2, we need some trophies. There are some outstanding performances every year, and I'm going to hand out a few informal trophies right now to my wonderful co-president, Mimi Rodman, here tonight, who took first out of, I think, 43 presidents of the CRC, beating herself in her previous performance from several years ago. And our subcommittee leads, Katie Lee, Amy Fitzgerald, and Brooke North, who are with us tonight. They are competing nationally as our subcommittee representatives, and I think they'll make the district proud. So they did a wonderful job. And so I'm going to start tonight, and the subcommittee leads are going to speak about each of their individual audits, then Mimi Rodman will close. So we can begin with our first slide. And do I have the clicker? Someone have the clicker? Let's see it. Thank you. Thanks so much. Oh, great. Okay, so we began the year with some essential questions, really some self-reflective questions. We were wondering, what is the purpose of the CRCs? Adding some big broad questions about, asking some big, broad questions about ourselves and our efficacy. Have we conducted our business effectively? How should the CRC select its research? What are the best practices for a research report? And does the CRC have a protocol for self-assessment? We had two focuses for the year. One was to identify the qualities of a sound CRC report, and two was determine the role and structure of the CRC that best serves District 39. So in looking at the reports, our first focus, there was quite a bit to filter through. There were approximately 130 reports to choose from. We began applying some criteria to filtering these down so we could have something accomplishable, something that was feasible for 1 year of self-reflection auditing. So we eliminated the outdated, the too recent, the irrelevant, and we narrowed it to 3. Gender similarities and differences in learning and development performance, 2005-2006, Green Schools, 2008-2009, and creative learning environments, 2004-2005. And the reason we did this is it was a very diverse sample set. Although variety is the spice of life, this might have been a bit too much of variety for anyone, or for consistency in a report. 27 and 97 pages in length is considerably variable. 5 to 90 recommendations. So this was a nice sample set to take a look at and say, what are our conventions? This is not an insignificant amount of time that committee members put in. It's thousands of hours of work in a year. And so we wanted to be reflective and think, are these effective? Are they making an impact on the district? Is the board understanding these reports? Can we convey ourselves better? Can we conserve our time more intelligently? So we broke into 3 subcommittees, each with a wonderful leader who will review their audit with you tonight. And we went through a 3-step evaluation. And so what we really wanted to do is we wanted to first apply a rubric to the report and ask ourselves, is it clear? Is it meaningful in the way that the report is written? Is the research sound? Are the recommendations cogent? Then we wanted to go through an interview process and look at the folks who interpreted the report. Was it impactful? Did it make changes? And then to look at through documentation that we could look at the actual and measure the impact. Were the recommendations taken by the board? Were they implemented? How successful have they been? And then we could start from this to sort of identify the characteristics of an effective report, and then generate, as we'll talk a little later tonight about, a template for a thoughtful, consistent design for research going forward for the committee. At this point, then, I will hand it over to Katie Lee.
Thank you, Matthew. When applying the form and conventions rubric to the gender differences and similarities report, the auditors reviewed the report for the form and conventions, and we found a few noteworthy strengths. The rationale and the topic selection process, the research quality, and the feasibility of the recommendations. The Gender Differences Subteam presented information detailing their research and findings through literature reviews, District 39 student assessment data, and survey data to better understand the topic and assess the relevance of their work to the district. Under the document review and the interviews, the audit revealed 8 out of 9 of the main recommendations implemented by District 39 through many venues, such as the school improvement plans, the professional development for teachers, thank you, and the Department of Human Resources. The only exception was the recommendation to adopt a mission statement regarding gender differences in learning, and although an adoption of a mission statement is not a practice of the district, District 39 fully supported and acknowledged that boys and girls learn differently, and educational practices should reflect that belief. This belief and practice continues to be true today.
Hello. I'm going to talk about the Green School, so I didn't print it out. I have it on my computer. The Green School report was done in 2008 and 2009. Oh, thank you. And there was a lot of new technology at the time, a lot of information online, and state incentives such as grants. We, as a district, had already done a lot of things at that time, and they wanted to look at the school to see how they could become more green with all of the new products that were out there and the technology, and with help from parents and the students. With gardens, we had already started some of those things. It was 197 pages, the report, so it was a little bit ironic, and we felt very guilty about printing them even when we did it double-sided. Many of the suggestions, which we had 90 suggestions throughout the report, even had subsections, so it was kind of hard to follow that many suggestions. But many of them were implemented when we look at the last 6 years since the report, and technology has changed on an almost weekly basis. So to best understand this, we had a consultant come in at the time, and that was one of the recommendations. And we followed the suggestions of the consultant if they could save us money in the next 10 years. There were things that were not quantifiable, such as working together with members of the community. That was something we really couldn't put a number on. And there were things that we were already doing, such as adding green ideas to the curriculum. We have a great thing where we talk about chemicals and how their effect is on soil and water, and the kids make a whole thing with soda bottles. I love it. So there were already things in place that we are still doing now. We did a majority of the recommendations except for the green czar, which was somebody who was going to be overseeing all of this. I would like to say that I would like that title. So, I think that actually Dr. Lechner said that they're thinking about that, but they wouldn't use the term czar, which in that case, not interested. There was a variety of implementation because during these 6 years, technology did change. And some of the ideas that were in the green team led to other ideas. Dr. Lechner also had a goal for 2015-16. We now call it sustainability, not green anymore. And last month, I know that the board had the consultant come out and talk about the updated recommendations. So this has really become a culture of District 39. And I would say even before this, we were one of the first districts in the area to be looking at this.
Okay, since I wasn't on the green team, I printed my information. I worked with a subcommittee that reviewed the creative learning environments in our school, and the rationale for this topic of study came out of the 2004 District 39 strategic plan, which outlined in their vision and strategic priorities the necessity to look at creativity and how that was being implemented and supported in our classrooms across the district. The CRC approached that by looking at the curriculum, at the practices in classrooms at various grade levels, and looked at how time was spent in the classroom. They provided 6 detailed recommendations. However, they were very concise, as my report was the shortest report. And of those 6 recommendations, 5 of them were put into place. When we met with the administrators, we found that, in general, as a CRC, it's important to select topics that have some longevity to them, and that has proven to be true with their creativity report, as we've seen learning commons develop within our district. We see the continued use of cross-curricular lessons, and obviously as we've adopted the Common Core standards and implemented the PARCC testing, you also see how important the topic is in teaching children not just to come up with the right answer, but to also understand the process and work together and learn in different ways. We also learned from our interviews that it is important for the CRC to examine why we are doing what we're doing in our district, whereas we turn over the responsibility of how to implement those changes to the administrators and the faculty and staff that work with our children to actually do the implementation and make it happen. Especially with our report, we found, as you heard with the Green Schools, that it's hard to measure creativity. It's not something that you can necessarily put a number on. You can add up how many kids or how much more creative they've become over time. And so that was a difficult thing for us to embrace as we were reviewing the report as well, because I think so many people want to be able to make it quantifiable, and it's just not. In looking at the documents that we had for review, which included the school improvement plans, the superintendent reports, the district performance goals at that time, it was obvious that most of the implementation focused on creating learning environments that promoted creativity. And across the district, there were a variety of different ways in which you would see that pop up. It would be in their evaluations of teachers. It would be in their cross-curricular lessons that were going on, especially in technology and within the Spanish curriculum. They implemented institute days for teachers, or I should say they hosted institute days for teachers to guide them as they prepared students to hold student-led conferences. They encouraged flexible grouping, especially in mathematics. There was a parent-teacher book club that was hosted at one of the schools to help educate parents about the importance of creativity and differentiation in learning. And there was a creativity faculty group set up as well. As I said, each school did something different and approached that goal in a different way. The creativity report was followed by the gender report, and it often, as we were reviewing the documents that we had available to us, we could see that creativity and gender definitely got lumped together in some ways, and so creativity may not have been fully developed, but yet part of creativity is recognizing the differences in our students that we teach. Currently, creativity continues to blossom in our district. We see that through the Characteristics of Successful Learners program. We see that in the learning comments that are being developed and in the professional development activities that our teachers take on.
So, while the CRC is not as old as I am, the CRC is actually older than a lot of people in this room. It's over 40 years old. And so you heard from Matthew what we sought out to do this year for really an institution that's been, so integral to the district. And then you heard from these three wonderful ladies about what we found from the audits. And I think it's really hard to sort of summarize. I will say there was definitely a common theme, which is, I think that it speaks very much to the volunteerism of our community, and also there was an integrity. There was an integrity throughout the three reports. People were very careful, gave a lot of thought, and tried to improve the district. How they communicated that, just in terms of the length and the way they presented it, was variable. And so, having spent a year looking backwards, we then turned to how we can advise the board and serve for the future CRCs in the best way possible. And so we have a couple of things that we came up with, and what we are thinking we would recommend for the next CRCs to sort of road test these recommendations. So we came up with some timelines, and timelines really just has to do with month by month, thinking about what the flow of the CRC is and what it's trying to accomplish every month, frankly, just so we stay on schedule. A lot of workflows, and it's the nature of volunteerism when you have new groups coming in all the time. That's the same thing with the workflow. We also came up with a template design, sort of took a page from foundations that have grant applications. And so our template is pretty basic and yet hopefully flexible and yet concrete enough so that it can guide future CRCs. It suggests how, page 1, you do this. Page 3, think about this many pages. Please make these sort of recommendations and think about this level of detail. So hopefully more of a sense of uniformity going forward, and then that will serve, the district better. We also suggested that you build in annual audits of reports so that we will go into a 3-year cycle once a CRC report is written, and hopefully in sort of a more uniform process, and it's 3 years old, the district goes back, takes a look at it, or the CRC goes back, that CRC that year goes back and looks at it, see how's it doing. Okay. We also then looked at the bylaws of the CRC themselves just to do a double check to see that is something that is sort of consistent with all the things that we've worked on this year. the bylaws were looked at pretty recently, and so we certainly weren't going to try to reinvent the wheel. What we did do was we took the purpose statement, which had several subparts previously, and can you imagine when you get all these educators together, you've got to tighten up the writing and so forth. So this is our revised purpose statement. The bylaws require that you all would look at it and opine on it and let us know if we can do it. But it's simply a tightening to say that the purpose of the CRC is to advise the board. Generally, to do that, we would do one research topic a year. Some past CRCs had done multiple reports, but we suggested that there's generally one. And the word generally also recognizes that there might be in future years a topic that would lend itself to an even longer cycle. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Next steps. Suggest that the next CRC road test this, see how it works. And then we have our last meeting of the year on June 6th. That's going to be our crossover meeting. We've got some wonderful volunteers who are staying on. We have some wonderful new volunteers who are also joining. And so we'll then just look on to next year, think about what the topic is going to be next year, and look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good work. Do we have any comments or questions from members of the board? Yeah, Kimberly.
Thank you very much for a concise and very easy to read and thorough report, I think. Having served on the CRC, I think that the idea of a template from which to work is simple, yet just truly brilliant, because I do think that as a group sits together and comes together with a topic, it is very overwhelming, or can be very overwhelming, without some kind of a flow and structure. And I think that I'm hopeful that this type of structure and focus will lead to even better reports that can be worked from even more productively than we have in the past. Thank you.
Cindy.
Thank you. I would just echo Kimberly's comments. As another former CRC member, I think the template's great and will be incredibly helpful. I had a question on the audit. If the intent of the audit would be to kind of loop back, and actually, I mean, a lot of the audits that you did, you kind of referenced, a lot of the recommendations were put in place. Would the intent of the audit be to kind of identify perhaps things that weren't and should have, or revisit kind of why or why not, or kind of what would be the outcome of finding something that didn't get implemented?
Okay, I'll do my best, and then if anyone else wants to jump in. One of the struggles we had with the audit is we weren't sure, because it was so long ago, which recommendations were implemented as a direct result of the reports. And so we thought, while it's fresh, we would have this continuing check-in to see how the recommendations are being implemented and in what ways. And we thought if we do it periodically, it would be a better measure of how successful those ideas were.
I have some thoughts on an audit kind of template, or how to kind of think about that too. So it's great. Thank you.
Great. Okay, anybody else? John? Mark? No? Nope. Okay, I want to thank you all for a year of hard work. We really appreciate the support, the long-standing support of the CRC for the district, and the many, many initiatives that you all have produced out of your group of diverse individuals, diverse backgrounds. So we really appreciate that, and I think this was an excellent year to take us, a look at what we've done in the past and how we can move forward and be more effective. So I look forward to the meeting in June. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Lechner, the Para-Joint Committee and the Slow Action Research Update.
SLO.
SLO, sorry, I knew that. I was about to say Student Learning Objectives, but I was like, okay.
The district's joint committee has been working very hard for a very long time with an extremely challenging task, and they finalized their work recently, Next year, as we know, every teacher is required to have a student growth as part of their evaluation, and will create and implement a student learning objective, SLO. Next steps include professional development for teachers and principals as we incorporate student growth into our evaluation process. Dr. Glowacki and friends are here with this report.
I have lots of friends tonight. I'd like to start by introducing the committee members. We have Douglas Wilson, Mike Holden, Jessica Torf in the back, Denise Thrasher, Melanie Horowitz, Kelly Jackson, myself, and Christina Heidi, who could not be here tonight, so thank you. The Performance Evaluation Reform Act, or commonly known as PARA, became part of the District 39 Teacher Evaluation Plan in the fall of 2012. Teacher professional practice has been evaluated through the use of Charlotte Danielson's 4 domains, resulting in a summative performance rating for both pre-tenure and tenured teachers for the last 3 years. Beginning in the fall of 2016, District 39 is required to incorporate student growth measures into the teacher evaluation system. Student growth must be a significant factor for the teacher's evaluation summative rating. The PARA Joint Committee was charged with the task of considering the different types of assessments as defined by PARA rules. Right now, I'd like to invite Doug Wilson to come up and share the different types of assessments that we reviewed.
The PARA Joint Committee was charged with the task of considering the different types of assessments as defined by the PARA rules. A Type 1 assessment is a reliable assessment that measures a certain group or subset of students in the same manner with the same potential assessment items. A Type 1 assessment is scored by a non-district entity and is administered either statewide or nationally. An example of a Type 1 assessment is the performance series assessment that we give already in the district. Type 2 assessments are those developed or adopted and approved for use by the school district and intended to be used as a district-wide basis by all teachers in a given grade, course, or subject area. An example of a Type 2 assessment is the common writing assessment that we currently use. Type 3 assessments are assessments that are rigorous, that are aligned to the course's curriculum, and that are determined to measure student learning in that specific course. Type 3 assessments are often teacher-created assessments. The committee has not yet determined which Type 1 or Type 2 assessments will be used for District 39. Therefore, all assessments being used in the 2016 through 2017 year are considered Type 3 assessments. Essentially, every assessment, performance series, district assessments, and the ones created by teachers will be considered Type 3 assessments for next year and are acceptable for use in this process. The critical factor is considering which assessment to use will be used to select or create an assessment that effectively measures student learning. While 2 student growth measures are required, there is an exception in the law for the first year of implementation. The PARA Committee did not identify any Type 1 or Type 2 assessments for our district for this year. Therefore, we are only required to use 1 Type 3 assessment for 2016-2017. However, during the 2018-2018 school year, 2 student growth measures will be required for the student growth component in each evaluation cycle. The PARA Committee believes that having all teachers focus on 1 student growth measure in the first year of implementation will allow opportunities for collaboration and learning the process for measuring student growth. The PARA Committee determined that District 39 will measure student growth using student learning objectives, or SLOs. Teachers that are required to have student growth measures as part of their evaluation plan will all participate in creating and implementing an SLO next year. Student growth results will comprise 30% of the teacher's summative rating for next year. The law does not require the following positions to have student growth as a component of the evaluation process: school psychologists, school social workers, school nurses, and non-teaching school speech and language pathologists as determined by their license. While some school districts have decided to require these positions to have student growth as part of their evaluation system, the District 39 PARA Joint Committee has determined to follow the recommendations in the law. Therefore, the identified staff members will not be required to have student growth measures as part of their evaluation. Next, I would like to introduce Mike Holden, who will be talking about the SLO process.
Thank you. Unlike the last few years when staffs were engaging in action research, we now have a structure and forms that we believe will assist everyone, teachers and evaluators, in completing the process. We have broken the process down into 6 steps. Step 1 is the assessment approval. Prior to beginning the SLO planning, teachers careful planning must occur as to the selection or creation of the assessment plan. They must select the pre-assessment or baseline assessment as well as the summative assessment criteria. These assessments should be designed to capture the wide variety of knowledge and skills our students demonstrate. Additionally, teachers will need to develop a plan for the formative assessments that will be used throughout the instructional interval and to determine if the students are making expected progress towards the learning objective. All Type 3 assessments need to be approved by an evaluator. The PARA committee has developed a process for approving these assessments. Once an assessment has been approved, it does not need to be approved again by a different teacher. It is our intent to develop a system for storing approved assessments that teachers and evaluators can readily use. Step 2 is the pre-assessment, where teachers will administer the pre-assessment and get their baseline data. Step 3 is the SLO planning process. The teacher will take their SLO pre-assessment data and determine a learning objective, growth targets, an interval of instruction with a minimum of 6 weeks, but adjustments can be made for teachers who only teach 6-week classes, and set a midpoint date where a review will take place. A planning form will be filled out and completed by the teacher in late fall, and then that leads to the SLO being submitted for approval by an administrator. If the administrator does not approve the SLO against the criteria, the teacher and the evaluator must meet to collaboratively determine the necessary revisions and adjustments to the SLO. Step 5 is the midpoint review based on formative assessment data, including student work. There is a form that will be submitted to the evaluator, and adjustments to the growth target and the student population can be made at this point with the approval of an administrator. Finally, step 6, after the summative assessment has been administered and the data has been collected, the teacher will complete the outcomes reporting form no later than 2 weeks prior to the teacher's summative meeting. Turn it back over to Heather.
Thanks, Mike. So unlike our typical assessments that we look at, we're not looking to see if students attain us at a certain level. We're looking to see if they've met their growth targets. We're going to look at students where they begin with their pre-assessment, their baseline assessment, decide where they're starting from, and look to see if they make the expected growth that we would hope based on that pre-assessment. So you can see on this slide that we're looking to see how many of the students actually meet their growth targets. And that number is dependent on then the teacher's rating for growth. And so we, as a joint committee, have decided to adopt the state's model. Teachers who have 76% or more of their students achieving their growth targets, meeting their growth targets, will receive an excellent rating, which would comprise 30% of their overall summative rating. We have a nice color-coded chart to go in our book, but it's not quite ready for publication just yet. But this is an example of how student growth will factor into the overall ratings for our teachers. Melanie is going to talk to us about our next steps.
Thanks, Heather. The PARA committee still has a lot of work to do. We're not done. In addition to soliciting feedback from the staff as they implement the first year's growth for student growth in the 2016-17 school year, we'll also be implementing decisions for the 17-18 school year. We'll be creating and providing training for all of this next fall. We're also working on a guidebook to provide an explanation of the process, as well as reference documents and samples for our teachers. There will be breakout sessions during each of our Institute days to support and our teachers, and an opportunity to get all of their questions answered. And we'll also be creating podcasts for each step in the SLO process to be used as an ongoing reference as we work and learn together in the process. So new teachers coming into the district each year will have this as a reference.
Finally, we want to talk a little bit about our process. What we shared with you tonight is the nuts and bolts. It's the decisions that we had to make as part of a committee. But we have been committed from the very beginning to make this more than a compliance effort. Our work, our careful planning and thoughtful instruction and reflection is really intended to have a significant impact on our students. And tonight, we have a few of our action researchers. The teachers that work directly with Ann Cummins-Bogan, our consultant from CEC, to share what they learned through this process. As a reminder, we didn't have these rules that we just shared with you in place in the fall. We kind of said, have at it. We want you to work with students. We want you to set goals. We want you to assess intentionally and then reflect on those outcomes. So they didn't have the benefit of some of the structure that we just spoke about, but they have good information to share. Tonight we have Ann Clark from Harper School and Chanel Pike from Central. Courtney Lauer was supposed to be with us tonight, but she's sick, so Denise Welter is going to share her story on her behalf. So Ann Clark.
Hi, thanks, Heather. I was really excited to participate in the SLO research because I really like data, so I think about data a lot. And considering my current caseload and daily job responsibilities, I felt strongly about utilizing this year of action research to try out an SLO focusing on a social behavioral objective. I collaborated with another LBS and a first grade classroom teacher, working with a class of first grade students, 3 of whom had IEPs with social emotional goals. We looked at the Illinois Social Emotional Learning Standards as well as the Common Core Listening and Speaking Standards when setting our learning objective. We considered what we wanted our students to know and to be able to do. So we set our objective to be that students would be able to identify a range of emotions in themselves and others and identify and use strategies that can change how you feel, like getting a drink of water to calm down when you're upset or doing jumping jacks or chair pulls to help wake yourself up when you're feeling tired. We used a type 3 teacher-created assessment. It was given orally and individually to students and asked students to label different facial expressions and state strategies that they could use to change how they were feeling. Our baseline showed a pretty wide range of students' abilities to label feelings and talk about regulating their emotions. We provided direct and differentiated instruction to students using lessons from the zones of regulation that complemented the second step curriculum. This gave us the opportunity to implement and integrate some of the programming that we're having great success with our RTI and special ed students at a broader level. 82% of our students met their planned instructional targets. This process gave me an opportunity to reflect on my role in the growth of all Harper students. I spend most of my time planning and reviewing IEP goals for individual students. Although I frequently go into classrooms for social skills lessons and am a daily recess supervisor, I've rarely considered the baseline of an entire classroom. The team I worked with spent a great deal of time creating and scoring and reflecting on the teacher assessment tool. At our midpoint check-in, we adjusted our assessment technique, having students instead point to a certain feeling rather than label it. We spent a lot of time trying to refine our assessments to make them easier to give to a group while still capturing the depth of information that would help us to plan for instruction. As a result of this SLO, I have become more thoughtful about writing assessments. I also have new ideas about working with a broader range of students to improve their social emotional skills. I had not previously intentionally planned for students with average or above average SEL skills, and it stretched my knowledge to incorporate more complex emotional vocabulary and social problem solving with some students. So it was an interesting experience. Thanks.
Good evening, I'm Chanel Pike. I teach second grade over at Central. And this year my SLO was on 3-digit addition and subtraction for second graders. So overall, some of the things that I learned from this process was for me to become a lot more accountable for tracking the progress throughout formative assessments, whereas before I'd really focus on the beginning and the end, and I would make kind of informal observations along the way when I'm doing my teaching with the kids, but I really tracked throughout the entire process, which really helped me hone in on the kids and how to best support them the following day. I also learned how much pre-teaching is amazing for my students this year. And after doing a formative assessment every day, if the kids who were struggling a bit more did a great job, I would use that small group opportunity to really tailor pre-teaching for them for another lesson. For example, with 3-digit addition and subtraction, when you're subtracting with zeros, 300 minus 156, it's very challenging. So using that pre-teaching time really helped my kids succeed and give them that confidence. Some of the things that I've changed since going through this process is, again, being very accountable with myself and tracking where the kids are, where their strengths are, where they're still showing that they need some support so that I can help them in that area. And kind of bouncing off what you said a little bit too is a lot of the times I was focusing really strongly on the lower kids. But with the SLO, I really needed to look at the whole class as a whole and make sure every single one of them succeeded, high or low. So that really gave me the opportunity to reflect on how I can give the higher kids extended response questions instead of just those equations, and kind of stretch their thinking so that they too, even with higher scores to begin with in a pre-assessment, showed that really nice growth and progress there. Ann Cummings-Bogan was great to work with. I was very excited to be able to have her knowledge throughout this process. I originally started with a SLO that was going to work on fact fluency. And she very kindly told me, well, that's really showing more of how much practice you're giving them rather than your teaching ability. So that was a really nice eye-opening experience to me, and she helped reflect with me about how I can best show my growth as a teacher and how I can best use my skills to help all of my kids succeed and grow in a variety of ways. So overall, it was a wonderful experience.
I'm going to try to represent Courtney Lauer, who did an amazing job with her SLO. She is a 4th grade teacher at Mackenzie, and she is one of our piloting teachers who worked with the new Calkins reading kits that all of our teachers are going to be working with in another year. So I'm really excited to share with you firsthand information about how effective these new kits are. So this is a sneak peek into the future. So Courtney decided to work on the 4th grade informational reading skills. So it's the first unit of teaching kids how to read nonfiction. So she did a 10-week SLO and really looked at some of the reading skills like analyzing the author's craft, analyzing perspective, parts related to the whole, cross-text synthesis. It's pretty high-level stuff. The good news in using these kits, when we have teachers with all kinds of ability levels and all kinds of training coming to us, is that they have a really nice roadmap laid out for them. They also have all the pre and post assessments built in with really well thought through rubrics that all of our teachers can use as a common assessment for kids to progress monitor and to measure growth. I was really impressed with that. So what Courtney did was she started out with a pre-assessment for her whole class. She decided she needed more than one piece of data to start making decisions on how to plan her instruction, so she selected running records as her second tool. She combined that data, and from that, she decided how to differentiate her targets. She decided how many points on the rubric her lowest students would need to grow, her typical students, and her high flyers. She set a target that 70% of all of her students would make their expected growth. And again, as you just heard, that's very different than 70% of the class met a target. She did all of the really effective teaching from mini lessons to strategy groups, and it was really constantly reassessing, progress monitoring. It's an ongoing thing. So I think if anything, what this process teaches us is that it's not one test and it's not one size that fits all. Because as they're teaching, for example, she did running records twice a month with all of her students. She used this rubric 3 times a week when she met with her kids in small strategy groups. So it's constantly doing that litmus test. Are we on track? So that we're not waiting for that final post-assessment.
The great news is she exceeded her target. She went beyond 70% of the kids. She went to 75% of kids making their targeted gains. And I just want to close with some of her takeaways, her learning. She was nice enough to share a direct quote with me. She said, "I found that the SLO process to be very beneficial to my teaching practice. I appreciated the process being very collaborative and allowing for teacher input. Working on an SLO this year helped me to consistently reflect on my teaching practice and make adjustments as needed to meet individual students' needs, all students. I also feel that the SLO process takes into consideration individual students and provides us a focused platform for carefully monitoring student learning and growth, So this is a forecast for the future, and it's really exciting."
With that, we'll take any questions or comments.
Great. Board members, do we have any questions or comments? John?
I have a couple questions. I hope that's all right if I
Sure.
start off. I was surprised to read that the Joint Committee was unable to identify type 1 or type 2 assessments. And I'd like to hear a bit about what the impediments are, because we have quite a lot of experience with performance series and the common writing assessments. So I don't know, Doug or Heather or Melanie, if anyone wants to comment.
I'll start and feel free to jump in. I think it was a function of looking at the decisions that needed to be made in order to have a student growth plan in place. And when we understood that there was an opportunity to give us a little bit more time to look at the assessments that we currently have and to assign them into two categories, type 1 or type 2 assessments, we took that opportunity, knowing that nothing would be precluded from use next year, but it would give us more time to really think through with curriculum and instruction exactly where our assessments fall and how we wanted to categorize them for future use. So we had an opportunity to give us a little bit more time to be more thoughtful with it, and that was what we chose to do as a committee.
Thank you. Under SLO planning on page 3 of the report, there's a reference to essential learning outcome aligned to applicable state and national standards. Could you talk about how SLO goals for gains or growth would relate to applicable state or national standards?
Okay. So we spent our January Institute Day working with staff and using our current curriculum maps to identify the state standards and the various components of the curriculum that are outlined in that map. And the whole goal of that day was to be able to align the outcomes that we wanted for students with the state standards and to make sure that there was a connection between the two so that we weren't operating sort of on a whim. We were following exactly the plan.
And I guess that leads me to my final question or observation. I see, or I thought I heard that the measurements in the summative assessments for excellent and proficient are guided by state rules or state standards? Do I have that right?
They are. Those are the ones that the Para-Joint Committee decided upon.
They decided to follow.
Correct.
An initial reaction from just one board member is that 51%, 52% does not strike me as proficient in the experience I've had over 20 years with the Wilmette Public Schools. So I wouldn't want you to invest too much in that as a criteria that the public would endorse. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mark.
Yeah, I just had a question, and actually Dr. Welter addressed some of it, but I'm trying to understand how the baselining is done, and I guess the specific question is on the pre-assessments. The way I understand it from the description so far is essentially, you I'll say give a test, but I mean it more generically than, giving a test. Assess the level of ability at that point, and then based on that, segment the students into maybe a couple of different groups and say, okay, this group needs to get this much growth, this much that. So I have two questions related to that. One is, what are the other factors that you think are going to be important to take into account other than strictly, ability going in? Because you do have more information about how students grow, where students struggle, where they don't struggle, where they're ahead, et cetera. And so question one is, what else do you get to put in? And question two is, how do you think about what the function of growth as related to initial assessment should be? And we've had this discussion before, and so you probably know what I'm talking about already, but just for the benefit of others, there is certainly one school of thought that would say that if you are towards the end that's high performing at the beginning, that you will have less growth available to you. But it's not clear to me how much less growth and what's an appropriate target there. So I'd be interested in both those.
Well, and quite honestly, the short answer is we don't know. And I know that doesn't sound very reassuring, but this is our first year of implementation. And when you take a test that hasn't been analyzed in this way, we don't know what those expected growth targets are. Ann Cummins-Bogan has told us that over and over again. It's an unknown. So to your point, John, about the parameters of the state, we're starting there. We may not end there. I don't know where we'll end, but the reality is that we don't know what that expected growth is. We have an idea based on historical practices. We have an idea of where we think our students will go based on where they start, but we won't know that until we actually implement it and start working with the assessments. And we will identify these type 1 and type 2 assessments that will be able to hopefully better help us gauge that expected growth.
I'd like to add something to that. The type 1 and type 2 assessments are very easy because they're already developed. And that's why it's important that this next year be a type 3 year, because it's a lot of rigorous work to develop the type 3 assessments. And they're going to need a whole year to prepare for that. And then also, I remember when hearing one of the workshops, Ann said that if you do your first assessment and you do a pre-test and you have kids who achieve the whole test, the test isn't good. So then they have to go back and redesign the test. So there is absolutely growth available.
Ann consistently has told us over time you want a low floor and a high ceiling to capture as much student information as possible. To your second question, Mark, about those other factors, that is part of the process. The midpoint review allows for teachers and evaluators to look at the data, look at where our students are, and look at the whole child, not just the numbers, but are there other factors going on? Is there something going on at home or with another student that may be reflective of not the performance we would expect on that assessment? So yes, we do have to look at the numbers. We're required to look at the numbers, but it doesn't preclude us from looking at all of the other factors that may impact student growth. It's looking at the whole child.
If I could just add one thing, what I saw that Courtney was able to do was she used the pre-assessment that came with the Calkins units of study, but then she added a multiple measure. So she looked at a research-based standardized measure, and she took the expected rate of growth from that measure, and that helped her set her targets. So we do have some standardized measures that, while we would never want to use that solely for our students, when we combine that with the rubrics that are developed or being developed, we can come up with a pretty close range of where we want our kids to be. And that's really what we're doing, is we're creating ranges rather than just flat numbers. And it is a work in progress, but it's an exciting work in progress.
So thank you for that, for both of those answers. And based on those answers, I would say that my interest on this will be a lot about, so what is the process that we're using to determine, how we're doing? Are we getting the right growth numbers? Is 51% the right level for proficient or not? And how are we determining that? And what I'd love to hear about then in the future too is how we are capturing our data to allow us to systematically identify where we're doing better, where we could do worse, et cetera. And specifically, I'm going to call out, the midterm assessment, which I think is an interesting idea that can work really well, but can also be used as a crutch if it's done incorrectly. So, I'll be really interested to see things like, well, when we go into our midterm reviews, how often are we identifying issues that a child might have that are extraneous, that might, cause us to adjust the goal down, but also, how often are we identifying that, we might have set this goal a little bit too low and we should challenge ourselves a little bit higher. I think that's really important to keep both of those kinds of data. So thank you very much, though, for the work.
Great. Tracy.
I think I have some easy questions. One, who is just for clarification, is the SLO process a separate process than the assessment approval?
The assessment approval for next year will be part of the SLO process. We don't have any assessments approved yet.
Okay, that's part
Once assessments are approved, you don't necessarily have to go through the assessment approval process to implement an SLO.
Who is the evaluator
Building,
to assess?
our building principals.
Okay, an administrator,
And-
okay.
Or district if they want us to be.
Thank you.
Cindy.
I also probably had a couple of kind of specific or technical, but I don't mean hard questions. So what's the connection between the school, it's not the improvement plan, the SIP plan and the teacher slows, right? In the past, right, I think I recall we have the school goal, and I'm assuming that translates down to kind of what teachers are doing. So is there a connection, like does the school SIP then translate down to teacher SLOs? Does the school goal built up from the collection of teacher SLOs, or is there no connection?
So, for next year, there won't be an automatic connection. Type 3 assessments are exactly structured so that teachers can select the area that they want to focus in on with their students. So it could be that a third grade teacher is working on math, but a fourth grade teacher is focused on reading. Our goal, however, through the committee work has been to have teachers collaborate, so if not, so that we don't have teachers working individually, but they're working either as a grade level or as a group focused in on the needs of the students that they have in their classroom. So it isn't an automatic that the SLO work that one teacher is doing is automatically connected to the SIP or SIP goals of the school.
So those will be, I guess, separate considerations. I mean, if you end up with some macro objective for the school that deals with some cohort of the kids in some academic subject generally or some social emotional aspect, how does that?
So let me see if this helps to clarify it. These goals are related to our curriculum and priorities in specific classrooms. And so it may not be related to a school improvement goal necessarily, but certainly to curricular goals that we're trying to implement. Does that clarify it?
Yes, and I guess maybe there's a connection then to my next question, which is each teacher has one flow?
For next year.
And would that change over time? Is it just next
It
year?
may,
'Cause it's a pilot
that'll
year?
be a decision that the Para Joint Committee needs to make.
So only in the first year of implementation are teachers allowed to have one. Going forward, after next year, everyone is required to have two.
Okay. And then above and beyond that, the teachers are still going to have to do their part to deal with the school goal, et cetera.
So there are still district assessments that need to be given.
Right. They are.
Correct.
And then I think I recall from initial conversations on this that every student is ultimately touched by at least one slow, or is that like a figment of my imagination?
We did talk about that initially. The decision set up right now, I couldn't tell you 100% that every student will be impacted. Our goal is, again, collaboration and having teachers working together to assess all students. I think we've talked about some basic statistics. The larger your sample size, the better the outcomes will be for all students and teachers. So that is our hope, but I can't stand here tonight and tell you that that will absolutely happen. Another factor that we've learned through this process is the midpoint review. So if there's a student who isn't attending school regularly or is ill, those are factors that could exclude that student from that the sample size, essentially.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. Made a lot of progress. So Dr. Lechner, now we have the 5th grade team structure pilot.
Yes, this year Highcrest piloted several team options for 5th grade, and Kelly Jackson is here to make a recommendation. She has the report.
Good evening. Historically, there have been 16 homerooms in 5th grade made up of 4 houses. And they follow a traditional elementary model, meaning that the homeroom teacher teaches all of the core content areas to that particular group of students. While this model has been followed as students have transitioned from 4th to 5th grade, it has kept some of that transition limited by keeping a similar structure to what goes on in our elementary schools. We found that this created a difference in structure between 5th and 6th grade. 6th grade has historically been more departmentalized. We also found that this structure had students having reading and writing structure or instruction separated throughout the day, just depending on where related arts or world language might have fallen. So we didn't have the ability to have the ELA classes blocked. An important aspect of middle school philosophy includes having these teachers act as content area specialists. And additionally, as we move toward the new ELA curriculum, steps have been taken to create a new structure between that 4th grade year and the 6th grade year for students entering 5th grade, so that structure can improve transition and acts as a step between 4th and 5th grades, allowing for the blocking of ELA and using teachers as content area specialists. Of the 4 houses currently in 5th grade, House 1 continued with that traditional model. And then House 2, 3, and 4, they all piloted different structures during the 2015-16 school year. And we've gathered feedback to identify the direction and schedule for the coming school years. Our teacher feedback included some challenges in schedule development and placement of students. However, it was overwhelmingly positive, citing opportunities for increased differentiation as teachers focused on 1 or 2 content areas, increased collaboration for content areas, as well as departmentally and vertically. And teachers even had the opportunity recently to collaborate with 6th through 8th grade counterparts. Not one model rose to the top out of these 3. However, when asked, the models in House 3 and 4, where you had 2 ELA teachers and 2 either math, social studies teachers or 2 math science teachers, where all the teachers on a house were teaching a 5th content area. Those rose to the top as garnering most support across the grade level, and they both had equal support when we surveyed the teachers. Both of these models allow students to see their homeroom teacher for multiple class periods during the day, which we found was really important for that transition step. In addition to homeroom. Additionally, they allow teachers to focus on a limited number of content areas rather than all 5, and it could moving them more toward departmentalization. And then all models allowed for an ELA block, which we had identified as a benefit of changing the structure. For all of these models, as well as a traditional model, it's important to note that all students travel to PE and related arts with their homeroom, so that's an additional time that kids are grouped together with their homeroom for instruction. It's a different teacher, of course, but they still see the same students together. Additionally, students are mixed across the house. This is part of the reason for keeping the house structure for world language. So while they may not be with their homeroom for Spanish because they choose different world languages, they still see familiar faces from their house. Our recommendations for the 2016-2017 school year will be to move to a partially departmentalized model, such as was favored during the pilot year. We'll retain the house structure with 4 homerooms made of 2 two-teacher teams. This will improve consistency and transition for students from 4th to 5th grade, and again from 5th to 6th grade. and also will provide for cross-curricular integration between math and science. Common planning opportunities for teachers in one department will also be explored through scheduling. So we'll be able to build in some opportunities for all of the ELA teachers across 5th grade to meet, or all of the math teachers to meet, et cetera. The recommendation for 2016-2017 takes into account several teachers currently finishing endorsements in content areas such as math and science, and provides for 2 additional classrooms that we're adding next year due to enrollment. Where it says 3 houses there, it's important to note too that one of those houses is that additional 2-teacher team. We're calling it a house to maintain consistency, but it's just a 2-teacher team. For the 2017-2018 school year, we anticipate all 5th grade houses to be comprised of 4 houses made up of 2 2-person teams teaching ELA or math and science, with all 4 teachers on the house teaching social studies. Again, we will continue with the same model that we've had in the past, where all students travel to PE and related arts with their homerooms, and students are mixed across the house for world language. In order to look at the transitions between grade levels, we anticipate collecting data both between 4th and 5th grade from the student perspective, as well as the teacher perspective, as well as in 5th to 6th grade, so we can see if there's some efficiencies that we've gained and some ease with transition between the different grade levels. What we had found at the beginning of this whole process was that it was a big leap from 5th to 6th grade, where they were more departmentalized and kids were changing classes more regularly through the day. So providing this new structure in 5th grade will allow us kind of a baby step between 4th grade and 6th grade. Do you have any questions?
Great. Any questions from board members? Comments? Mark?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the 2017-18 structure, if we think that's where we're going, why aren't we going there next year?
Sure. This year, we're kind of in a flex year this year, because we have some teachers that are still working on getting endorsements in math and science. So those are coming along, and we anticipate them having that by the 2017-18 school year.
Great. Any other questions? No, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to also thank Aaron Dubno for all of his hard work this year with our 5th grade teams.
Okay, so our next strategic plan update is on our board strategy committee. Dr. Lechner.
Yes, the board had a self-evaluation recently with a retreat, and at that time they were looking at ways in which they could engage strategically with the district, so we're establishing a committee, and we're going to meet in June.
Great, great. And I just wanted to add that although we anticipate that most or all of our board members will attend this committee meeting, just like they attend most of our committee meetings, we do have 3 board members who are assigned specifically to this committee, and Cindy Levine will be chairing the committee, and Mark Steen and Frank Penzica will also be on the committee. They'll be the voting committee members. Thank you. Okay, the next is under annual business. We have our fiscal year 2017 District 39 tentative budget.
Yes, this was reviewed by the SFC, and it's ready for your approval as a tentative budget, and Gail Buscemi has this report.
Thank you, Dr. Lechner. Tonight we are presenting the District 39's fiscal year 2017 tentative budget. In March, you'll remember we presented the non-operating funds, and in April, a draft of the operating funds was shared with the community. There have not been any changes in the operating fund budgets from the April presentation. The operating funds make up 95% of the total budget. You will note that our expenditures exceed our revenues by $75,000. This includes one-time planned construction projects in fiscal year 17 of over $1.5 million. Our anticipated fund balance at June 30th, 2017 is estimated at $32.2 million as reflected on this slide. Our non-operating funds make up 5% of the total budget. As you can see, our expenditures exceed revenues by $161,000 after debt service payments. This debt deficit is due to the $200,000 abatement in the debt service fund in order to give back to our community. Our anticipated fund balance at June 30th, 2017 is estimated at $1.8 million. The fund balance for all funds is anticipated to be $34 million at June 30th, 2017. This represents an expenditure to fund balance ratio of 46.9%. As additional information is received in the next few months, the final budget will be adjusted before a public hearing in August. After approval tonight, the budget information will be available on the district's website and a hard copy at the district office for public review. In addition, there will be a publication of notice of public hearing for Monday, August 29th, 2016. Are there any questions?
Board members? No, we've reviewed this a lot, so thank you very much. Yeah. Well, it's always interesting. Okay, so the next is the fiscal year 2017 WCSEA tentative budget.
Yes, and District 39 continues to serve as a fiscal agent on behalf of the WCSEA, which includes District 39 and Avoca School District 37. The State Board of Education requires the WCSEA to keep separate accounting records and to follow the same Illinois state guidelines as required for all districts. And Gail Buscemi has this report.
Thank you. This is basically a flow-through entity with money coming in from our IDA grants and flowing out to District 39 and Avoca 37 for their respective portion of the funds. As you see on this slide, this is a balanced budget. This last slide is the budget development calendar that was presented in January 2016. We are moving towards the end of the process with your approval tonight and the announcement of the public hearing. On August 29th, we will have the public hearing and the final approval of the fiscal year 17 budget. The budget will then be submitted to the ROE, Illinois State Board of Education, and the county clerk prior to September 30th. Are there any questions?
No, I don't think so. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next piece of annual business is our resolution to transfer funds from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund.
Yes, we did the same thing last year. We're using operating funds to pay for capital projects. And by making a transfer from O&M into the capital fund, we're eliminating spikes in the O&M fund from one year to the next. And it also provides a more accurate reflection of true expenditures in the O&M fund. Gail Buscemi, anything to add?
Comments? No comments. Okay, let's move on to board policy review. The first is the first reading of revised Board of Education policies.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say this is the last set of first read policies for this school year. As the review of Section 2 is complete, and Dr. Glowacki has this report.
Thank you. Earlier this year, we revised Policy 2:20 about board reorganization, and we've brought it back to the table tonight to add a little bit of a tweak to it to allow us to reorganize as needed the different positions, the presidency, vice presidency, et cetera, in the non-reorganizational years. So you'll see that as a recommendation. Policy 2:260 is the uniform grievance procedures, and our attorney provided pretty hefty suggestions for revision, so we've included those. Policy 2:300 and 2:310 are not required policies. It's recommended that we retain those policies but combine them into one referenced as 2:300. Additionally, Policy 2:500 is not required. The board is able to recognize teachers and offer tributes to employees without this policy. So it's recommended that we delete 2:500. And finally, although Section 7 policies will be revised throughout next school year, because we recently referenced Policy 7:10, the Equal Educational Opportunities Policy, we felt it was important to update it at this time. Any questions?
Cindy? Just a couple. I just thought if we were updating 2:20, number 7, the point number 7, if you still want to call it school improvement plan or change it to whatever we actually are calling those. point number 16, I know that you added as needed. It says organize the board annually by electing officers as needed. And so do you mean that we would potentially do it more than annually?
I don't believe so.
No, we were just giving us an opportunity to make if we chose to make an annual. But we don't have to, right? The pattern is every 2 years. By this little change, then we can allow a mid-year change.
So doesn't annually cover that versus?
Yes.
Okay. I saw that you added as needed. Anyway, I was unclear.
I had
on
the
that.
same question. And what determines as needed?
The board, like if a board member decides not to continue in their role, like this year, right? We're revising the policy to reflect the practice that we did this year. So we can change the words anyway.
Okay. And then my last question on 7:10, I just didn't understand. There was a typo, but I didn't understand what, in the opening paragraph where it says the district remains viewpoint neutral, and I think it's supposed to say when granting access, but what does viewpoint neutral mean? I guess I didn't understand what that was. It says, it's the first 7:10, the first paragraph towards the end of that paragraph. The district will not knowingly enter into agreements with any entity, blah, 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 except that the district remains viewpoint neutral when granting access to school facilities. And I just didn't understand what viewpoint neutral.
We can get clarification from our attorney about that. I can guess, but I'd rather just get the legal counsel's definition.
There's a type, did you say there was a typo in there?
I think it should say
grading
granting,
instead
not
of granting.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments? No? I just had one comment. On 2:260, we jump right into it saying that parents and guardians, students should notify the complaint manager if they have, feel like either of these laws have been violated. Is it worth saying in the beginning that it's our intent to operate within the parameters of these two laws? But if students, parents, et cetera, feel like, these laws have been violated. I don't know, that was just
Look into adding that and clarifying
sure.
it.
And then if you go down further below number 13, which is crossed off, the first sentence, the complaint manager will attempt to resolve complaints without resorting to this grievance procedure. I don't think the procedure had been described yet, so I was wondering if it maybe should say without resorting to the grievance procedure described below.
Okay.
Just to be a little more clear about it.
And that also talks a little bit about what you were saying before, so.
Right.
Maybe it could be moved.
Oh, it can be moved.
We're going to find out, but it's a good point.
Okay. I think those were my comments. Any other comments? Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the second and final reading of our policies that we looked at last month.
Yeah, these have been revised as suggested by the board last month in April, and the attorney reviewed them again. And Dr. Glowacki, anything to add?
Just, I would highlight one comment with regard to section or policy 1:20. There was a question about whether we should include the language of pre-K and kindergarten, and our attorney indicated that districts often include the grade levels that are being provided by the school district. So while it's not required for us to provide kindergarten instruction, we do provide it and therefore should acknowledge it in the policy. If that were to ever change, we would revise the policy to reflect that.
Okay, great.
I just want to add that we moved policy 1:30 to a separate item from the consent agenda. We had some discussion we wanted to have about that separately,
I
so
think
we'll save that.
We want to have that discussion now,
Oh,
or
we
do
could.
we want to have it
We can.
later on?
Either way, it's up to you.
Okay, well, we might as well talk about it now, and then we can resolve how we want to move
Sure.
forward with that.
So
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
question that came up at the last meeting was whether or not we should include the philosophy statement or the mission statement for the district within the policy. Actually, the policy is not a required policy, so we don't have to have the policy at all. We could keep it, we could revise it, so we have some options as to how we might want to approach this.
board members have any viewpoints on this?
I don't think we should have the philosophy of the district in a policy document.
No, it doesn't.
I concur.
I totally agree, too.
That was very easy.
Okay. Is everybody else pretty much on board with that, Kimberly? And okay. Okay, so we will vote on that then when we move forward into our consent agenda and our next thing we're voting on.
I had one
Sure.
question on this read, and it just occurred to me, it's 2:2:250, all the commentary about FOIA. And I guess I had a question at one point, and then I realized it's referenced a lot of times. Should this have reference to all of these different, sections of FOIA? Because there's places in here where it says, unless this, agrees with section 6 of FOIA, or if not for section 2 of FOIA, and should this tell you where to go to find those sections or rules or whatever they're referring to?
So I can tell you that this is modeled after the press policy, and they don't reference it, and they reference everything in their model policy. That doesn't mean that we couldn't do it, it just wasn't something that was recommended.
How do people then, I guess, I'm not saying that we should write out the whole thing here, but is there just something that refers to FOIA information can be found at, I don't know,
If there's a place where it's freshly updated all the time, that's a good idea, but if we reference something that becomes dated, then we're in trouble. So, well, we'll look into it. I mean, that's a very good question.
Okay, but if it's updated all the time, then something here, because section 6 isn't going to be
Right.
section 6 anymore, or something, so
Right.
that maybe even makes it more important to be able to figure out what rules you're supposed to follow.
Okay, we'll look into it.
So I think we might want to pull that from the consent agenda then. Okay, so we'll do that when we get there. Okay, this is the second opportunity for audience members to address the board. Are there any audience members who'd like to address the board at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will move on with our agenda. The next order of business is the consent agenda. Are there any items that the board would like pulled from the consent agenda? Do you want to pull that?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess the second reading.
You would like to pull the entire second reading or just that one policy? Can we do that? 2:250?
Just don't read it when you're doing it.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Sure. Okay, any other items? Okay, great. Mr. Steen, will you proceed with the motion?
Sure. I move to approve the personnel report dated May 23rd, 2016. I move to adopt the FY17 tentative budget as contained in tonight's report for immediate public display, and further move to approve the publication of notice of a public hearing on the tentative budget to be held at 7 p.m. prior to commencing the regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting on Monday, August the 29th, 2016. I move to adopt the Wilmette Community Special Education Agreement FY17 tentative budget as contained in tonight's report for immediate public display, and further move to approve the announcement of a public hearing on the tentative budget to be held at 7 p.m. prior to commencing the regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting on Monday, August 29th, 2016. I move to approve tonight's resolution authorizing accounting transfers from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. I move to approve the 2016-2017 administrators' contracts for Ramona Harper, Assistant Principal, Central McKenzie, Assistant Principal, and Wilmette Junior High, Assistant Principal. I move to approve as first read revised Board of Education policies 2:20, powers and duties of the Board of Education, 2:260, uniform grievance procedures, 2:300, employment of members of the Board of Education and their relatives, 2:500, service awards and memorial, and 7:10, equal educational opportunities. I also move to approve as first read the deletion of policies 2:310, employment of former board members and their firms, or their firms, and 2:500, service awards and memorials. I move to approve as second and final read, revised Board of Education policies 1:10, school district legal status, 1:20, organization, 2:240, board policy development, 5:125, personal technology and social media, 7:200, suspension procedures, and also move to delete policies 2:251, access to public records, 2:270, formulation of policies, 2:275, adoption amendment for policies, 2:280, formulation of administrative regulations, 2:285, suspension of policies, 2:290, bullying, and 2:400, appointment and duties of the school treasurer. I move to delete as second and final reading revised Board of Education policy 1:30, school district philosophy. I move to approve the accounts payable for bills listed between April 26, 2016 and May 23, 2016 in the following amounts. Educational Fund, $489,981.08. O&M Fund, $169,212.93. Debt Service, $81,631.50. Transportation Fund, $160,894.80. Capital Projects, $39,207.23, for a total in all funds of $933,927.54. I move to approve the manual checks issued between April 26, 2016 and May 23, 2016 in the following amounts. Educational Fund, $441,073.04. O&M Fund, $64,617.31. Transportation Fund, $1,534.12, for a total in all funds of $507,224.47.
Thank you very much. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. The yeas have it. The motion is carried. Okay, let's move on to conference items. Is there any old business? Oh, he just did that. He did it. He included it. No, I thought that was kind of clever. Thank you. Okay, any old business? New business? Good and welfare. I just want to echo Dr. Luckner's remarks about the reflections of the staff. I just thought it was incredible. And an incredible number of teachers from my children's era, so I'm kind of feeling like getting old here, who are retiring or have been in the district for 25 years. But we have such talent, and I think it's just a testament to our leadership in the district and just the quality of people who work for us in this district. So it was just a great event. It was really, everyone was really enthusiastic. There was a great feel in the room. So. Anything else? Okay, so may I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss student discipline, potential litigation, collective bargaining, and specific personnel?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion having been made and seconded, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carried. We are now adjourned to executive session. Thank you for coming to the meeting. Good night. It is 9:05.